Pretty much every major XRP chart analyst out there is calling for at least double-digit prices for XRP. That's right, $10 and beyond. Even the analysts who aren't going out on a limb and boldly predicting that number will still admit that it's absolutely possible, maybe even likely, that we end up there. Take the blockchain backer, for example, one of the more cautious voices in the space. It's been saying $8, $9, maybe $10 per XRP. That's a very fair take. And honestly, he could end up being right. But what's interesting is, you don't often see predictions much lower than that. On the flip side, some analysts are throwing out much bigger numbers, $40 and higher. Personally, I'm skeptical about that kind of move happening this cycle. Would I love to see it? Of course. Do I think it's realistic right now? Not really. Down the road, in a future bull run? Sure, that's totally possible for this market. Though I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. In today's video, I'm going to walk you through predictions from a dozen different analysts. And it's honestly pretty wild to see this much agreement. These are smart traders with solid track records. Nobody's perfect, of course. But when so many of them line up on the same outlook, you have to stop and take notice. The question is, will they be right? Or will XRP surprise us with something more conservative? Or maybe something completely insane above $40? Drop your thoughts in the comments because I want to hear what you think. I wouldn't be shocked if we end up landing somewhere in between those extreme highs and lows. That's just my hunch, not a prediction. And to be clear, I'm not a financial professional. I don't give financial advice. Please don't buy or sell anything just because of what I say. I'm simply a crypto fan who enjoys making videos and talking about this stuff for fun. At the time I'm recording this, it's 5:30 p.m. Central. Sunday, August 17th, 2025. XRP is sitting at $3.10, and Bitcoin is just under $118,000. Right now, we're just kind of chopping sideways. But like I said yesterday, this won't last. We're not going to stay at these levels for long. Sure, there's always a chance the market dips before moving higher, but let's be real, this cycle isn't finished. We've still got way more room to run, and prices are headed much higher before it's all said and done. I came across a post from Charting Guy that really hit home for me. It said every time there's a dip, it feels like it's over. Every time there's a pump, it feels like this is it.
And honestly, isn't that so true? Even after nearly 8 years?
In the crypto space, I still notice how people react the exact same way. Logic tells us markets naturally move in waves, yet emotions always take over. And in crypto, the most volatile asset class on the planet, that emotional roller coaster gets amplified. I can't help but find it fascinating. Here's the bigger picture though. The crypto market keeps expanding. That's not slowing down. When I started this channel back in late 2018, I used to talk about the day we'd finally hit a $1 trillion market cap. Back then, we'd never seen it before. Well, we did hit it. Then I said we'd climb into the multi-trillions. Happened too. And looking ahead, I firmly believe we'll eventually reach $10 trillion, then tens of trillions, and ultimately cross the $100 trillion mark. So if you share that long-term vision, why waste energy being afraid of short-term moves? As long as you're broadly diversified across the market, you're aware of what's happening in case something unusual pops up, you're fine. Sure, every once in a while a project really does go to zero, but those are rare exceptions. Big picture, if you hold strong and stay patient, history suggests you'll be in a solid spot. It's wild out here right now. But let's not forget, even during bull markets, it's completely normal to see big corrections along the way. Take this post from Analysts Capital, for example, who's breaking down Bitcoin's past cycles. And since Bitcoin leads the whole market, it matters even if you care more about XRP like I do. He pointed out that in both 2017 and 2021, Bitcoin saw significant retracements at this exact stage in the cycle. In 2017, it dropped about 29% over the span of a single week. In 2021, the pullback was around 25%, but stretched over 3 weeks. Now what's interesting is that each retrace was quicker and shallower than those in earlier cycles. And that's key, because those smaller, faster corrections actually set the stage for the explosive rallies that followed. So, if we do get another retrace here, history suggests it would likely be the same story, just part of the setup before the final big move higher. Rect Capital even said it himself, if Bitcoin starts retracing now, a shallow, quick correction would fit perfectly with past cycles and act as the technical fuel for a final parabolic uptrend. Honestly, most analysts seem to agree. Not every single one, but the overwhelming majority expect one more huge push for Bitcoin, followed by alt season, and then the cycle wraps up with a bear market, which means the part where life-changing money is made? Yeah, that's what comes next. Chart analyst Mustache added to this with a really interesting take. He highlighted a bearish MACD cross on Bitcoin dominance, something we only saw in 2017 and 2021, and both times, it signaled massive altcoin seasons. His point? Hard to be bearish on alts after seeing that chart. I don't think it's just chance that this is happening right now. Bitcoin dominance is tanking, just like in past cycles, and every time it's been a precursor to altcoins, absolutely taking off. History doesn't repeat exactly, but it definitely rhymes. Other analysts are seeing the same thing. Amiki Bull. Crypto said Bitcoin dominance dumping is basically a warning bell for alt season. X-Force Global charted it too, showing dominance dropping from the mid-60% range a few months ago to under 60% now, and potentially heading toward the low 50s. That's exactly what you'd want to see. Bitcoin climbs first, then altcoins go crazy. Almost every analyst I follow is on the same page. This is unfolding right in front of us, and yet people are still fearful. Honestly, that's ridiculous. Here's another example from CryptoWizard, who shared an Ethereum chart. He showed ETH has already surged over 226% since the April bottom, when prices were hovering around $1,400. Back then, people were panicking, saying Ethereum was dead. I said it wasn't, and sure enough, here we are, with ETH knocking on the door of new all-time highs. Right now, ETH has pulled back to about $4,450. If that holds as support and reverses, the next leg up could launch Ethereum into uncharted territory. Can the bulls make it happen? My take: yes, they can. And history is once again proving itself. Spoiler alert, the answer is yes. It's just a matter of when, at least in my opinion. So let's shift gears and talk strictly about XRP for the rest of this video. CryptoWizard recently shared an XRP USD chart, and his take was pretty clear. XRP is setting up for a breakout. He noted that after retesting its previous all-time high zone, XRP is now pulling back, which often happens before the real parabolic rally kicks in. On his chart, he's targeting around $11. And here's the crazy part. That's right in line with what nearly every credible analyst is predicting. That's not something we've seen before. Thinking back to the last cycle, I don't recall analysts being this unified. Sure, there were plenty of bullish predictions back then, but it was all over the place, and then the SEC mess hit, which complicated things further. But today it's different. Out of all the analysts I follow, when they're this much in agreement, they're usually right, which is why I won't be surprised if XRP does, in fact, lands somewhere in that $8, $11 range. Now, could the actual peak end up higher? Maybe. Could it be a bit lower? Sure. Realistically, the top is probably somewhere between the lowest and highest predictions out there, and yeah, that's a wide range. But honestly, even the conservative end of those targets would be life-changing for most holders watching this right now. Chart analyst Zegrek Crypto added another interesting perspective. He questioned whether XRP will ever dip below the $2 macro structure again. Sure, maybe we get the occasional wick down on the daily or weekly chart, but as for a monthly close, under $2, he doesn't think we'll see that again in our lifetimes. He put it bluntly, history is being written right now, yet some people are still bearish on XRP. He even warned, don't expect to be an OG by buying under $1 anymore. According to him, it's a real long-term accumulation zone is anything below $10. That's the window you want to take seriously. And keep in mind, ZGREGG isn't just calling for double-digit XRP. He's talked before about targets in the $20, $30 range, maybe even higher. Could he be right? Absolutely. Nobody knows the exact number, but the idea that XRP may never fall under $2 again, that's something worth thinking about. As for XRP dropping back to $1, honestly, I just don't see it happening unless we get some kind of massive black swan event that drags down the entire crypto market with it. Outside of something that extreme, I'm very skeptical. Sure, over the years there have been plenty of times when people swore up and down that XRP would never return to a certain price, only for the market to prove them wrong during long bear stretches and sideways accumulation phases. But this moment feels very different. We're likely on the verge of a true parabolic blow-off top. And even if XRP eventually retraces hard, say 80% or so, I don't think it'll revisit those rock bottom levels from this past cycle. Those prices are probably gone for good. That's why when analysts say the cheap zone is now, anything under $10, they could be spot on. Think about it. Right now, XRP is just over $3. If this cycle really does push to $10 or beyond, today's price is going to look like a steal in hindsight. Anyone accumulating now could end up looking like a financial genius, the type who gets to brag to their family and friends about buying when everyone else was still doubting. Here's one from Dark Defender. I actually mentioned it yesterday, but it's worth bringing up again since we're talking about how practically every analyst out there is calling for double-digit XRP. In his latest post from just a couple days ago, he pointed to $10.47. Now, to be clear, that's not necessarily his peak target. He's talked about higher numbers before, but that's his most recent call. What surprised me, though, is that despite being around for years, he's been in the game at least half a decade. He still seems a little discouraged with XRP's price performance. Honestly, I find that kind of shocking. To give you an example, someone named Rob commented on his post saying, "Don't you get tired of posting these predictions when nothing ever happens?" And I was just sitting there like, wait, what? Dark Defender shot back with, "I wish you had been here since 10 cents. Are you a latecomer?" Rob replied, "No, I've been here since 15 cents. I'm just talking about the last 2 years." And to be fair, I get where he's coming from. He explained that it feels like every time XRP shows signs of finally breaking out, it gets smacked back down again. The $4 range in particular has been this frustrating barrier, and after years of buildup, you can sense the impatience. It's that classic feeling of, is the big day ever really going to come? When I read that comment, I couldn't help but think, wow, there really are people who feel that way. But honestly, I feel like I'm living on a completely different planet compared to them. Personally, I've been thrilled with XRP's performance since the election. It's actually been the #1 performing coin in the top 100. So to see someone talk about it with that much negativity, I just can't wrap my head around it. And look, everyone's entitled to their opinion. I respect that, but it surprised me even more when I realized this guy has been holding since XRP was around $0.15. Think about that. The last time XRP was down there was what, March 2020? I know after the SEC lawsuit, we briefly dipped into the 16 cents, 17 cents range, but 15 cents hasn't been seen in years. So yeah, he's clearly been through the ups and downs, and credit to him for sticking it out. But here's where I just can't relate: the emotional frustration. When I zoom out and look at the bigger picture, like I mentioned earlier in this video, crypto as a whole just keeps growing into a larger and larger pie over time. And XRP has carved out its piece of that pie. To me, that's what matters, not stressing about every little bump along the way at the end of the day. I think it just makes sense to accept that we're not in control of everything. Focus on what you can control in investing and let go of the rest. None of us can dictate the timing of when XRP explodes. All you can do is decide whether you're positioned when it finally happens or not. And given how strong XRP has already performed, I can't imagine acknowledging that and still saying, yeah, but it's not as high as I want yet. That just doesn't add up for me. Dark Defender actually responded to Rob with a great point. He reminded him that just 2 years ago, August 15th, 2023, XRP was only 58 cents. Since then, it's up 531%. And he added, if $4 is what's frustrating people, don't worry, XRP will eventually smash through that level too. And I agree. It's not an if, it's a when. Now, to be clear, I'm not trying to rip on Rob or anyone else who feels the same way. He's a smart guy and totally entitled to his opinion. But I see a lot of posts online with that same negative sentiment, and I just can't relate to it. In my view, it makes way more sense to shift into a positive, constructive mindset. Because, honestly, being frustrated at this stage, it just doesn't make sense to me. And I think Dark Defender nailed it. To back that up, here's another take. This one from Casey Trades. He's still very bullish on XRP and sees it running anywhere between $8 and $13 this cycle. I'm also keeping an eye on the wave patterns forming right now. They're showing that a test of about $4.80 looks pretty likely. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean XRP will stop there, but in the short term, it could push past Rob's $4 target maybe even sooner than people expect. And if you zoom out, you're still looking at that $8, $13 zone as a realistic possibility. Once again, we're talking about double-digit price predictions. And to me, that doesn't sound far-fetched at all. Do I know for certain we'll land in that exact range? No, of course not. But it's definitely not some crazy idea either. For example, Chart Nerd recently pointed out that XRP's bull flag pattern targets $15, yet another analyst lining up with a very bullish outlook. And then there's a fun one from Madsby, posted just a few days ago. I haven't shared this one yet. He said, be careful when a chart looks like this. And he showed XRP dropping sharply. But here's the twist. It was an inverted chart, which means he was actually pointing to XRP blasting upward toward $15, a clever way to make his point, and yet another chartist hinting at double-digit prices ahead. Don't be shocked if XRP does end up in that $8, $15 range we've been talking about. I get why some people are still cautious. I understand the sentiment. We're definitely not in full-blown euphoria yet, but honestly, that should give you confidence. Think about it. At the top of the cycle, when everyone is celebrating and convinced prices will only go higher, that's when I'll be the most cautious. Right now, I'm thrilled with where we're at. But as we inch closer to the end, I'll start getting nervous because we all know the party doesn't last forever. At some point, the music stops. And if you're not careful, you can hold on too long. Believe me, there will be people who end up round-tripping their gains, riding the whole wave up, only to watch it all vanish on the way back down. That brings me to a post from chart analyst Bobby A. He put it well, there's still plenty of fear in this market, and that should be obvious to anyone paying attention. Could we get a correction? Absolutely. He's written about that over and over, but he was quick to remind everyone that corrections don't change the bigger picture. This market still has higher to go. So yes, dips can and will happen, but make no mistake, we're not done yet. Someone even asked him what his XRP target was. And so when Bobby A was asked about his XRP target, his response was that from here, he's expecting roughly a 4x to 6x move based on where he and many of his long-term followers bought in. That translates to somewhere in the ballpark of $12 to $18, given current prices. And once again, this lines up with what I keep seeing everywhere. A remarkable level of agreement among reputable chart analysts. Honestly, I don't know if we've ever seen so many respected voices in the space all pointing to the same thing. XRP hitting at least $10. And let's be real, for most people watching, myself included, even $10 alone would be absolutely life-changing. That's the kind of financial outcome that feels like winning the lottery. And while $10 doesn't necessarily have to be the ceiling, nobody knows where the ultimate top will be. The fact that so many credible analysts see double digits as practically inevitable, that's powerful. And yes, it absolutely could end up much higher. Here's a post from chart analyst CW. He predicts that XRP is about to break above its all-time high line. Once that happens, there won't be any major resistance left in its path. In his words, that's when we'll see an explosive rally kick off. Now, I'll add a little perspective here, of course. There will still be some resistance points along the way. Price action never moves in a perfectly straight line. But I absolutely agree with the idea that once XRP clears that key level, we could see some massive moves in a very short period of time.
Ow.
Don't be surprised if XRP gains more than $1 in a single day at some point, maybe even on multiple occasions. That's how quickly this asset can move when momentum and euphoria hit. And let's be real, if the crypto market as a whole enters full-blown euphoria with capital cycling through like crazy, these kinds of explosive moves for XRP are completely on the table. On top of that, there's also an interesting chart from Analysts Zoom. He put together an XRP BTC chart on the top and an XRP market cap dominance chart on the bottom. What he pointed out is that both are stuck in long-term consolidation zones. Specifically, XRP BTC is forming a symmetrical triangle, while XRP dominance is forming a descending triangle. So let me ask you this. In a bull market, which way? Do you think those triangles are likely to break? My money's on the upside. If we do see a meaningful correction, it won't be unique to XRP. The whole market would be pulling back together. But given where XRP is positioned right now, I'd say the odds have never looked better for a breakout to the upside. Here's a post from Crypto Michael, and he's still rocking that same confidence as always, which honestly I love to see. He wrote, Bitcoin, ETH, and XRP will hit new highs very soon. The top isn't in until I say it is. Talk about cocky, right? But hey, he follows it up with, we're just getting started. And honestly, I don't think he's wrong. Even if we do see a short-term pullback, I believe the fireworks are still ahead. We're finally on the doorstep of that long-awaited face-melting season for XRP that people have been anticipating for nearly a decade. Another analyst, Maxi, echoed the same sentiment. Kept it short and sweet. Next week is about to get fun. This chart even points to XRP heading above $6 in the near term. Now, do I know for sure it's going to happen that quickly? Of course not. And no analyst has a perfect track record with timing. But is it possible for XRP to jump like that in a short window? Absolutely. It's in the realm of possibility. Now, let me share the most bearish take I could find, and honestly, it's not even all that bearish. This one's from Dolly Martinez. He said XRP needs to reclaim $3.30 to avoid a potential drop to $2.60, maybe even $2 flat. But notice he's not predicting that it will happen, just highlighting $3.30 as a key level to watch. Right now, as I'm recording this, XRP is sitting at $3.11, not too shabby at all. So am I worried? Not even a little bit. The trend is still higher, my friends. Higher. And just to be clear, I'm not a financial advisor. Nothing I say should ever be taken as financial advice. Always do your own research before buying or selling any crypto.